Thank you very much. It's terrific to be here. I've been thinking a lot about citizenship in these past few months and years. Who am I? Who do I belong to? Who do I owe duties to? Who protects me? Who looks after me? Part of the reason for that is, as some of you know, I wrote a book called East-West Street, which identifies the lives of four men and the origins of two crimes: crimes against humanity, which is about the protection of individuals, and genocide, which is about the protection of groups, which raises the fundamental question: am I an individual? Am I a member of a group? Am I both? Am I more than that? How do I define myself? In writing the book, I had occasion to research my own family history, going off when I accepted an invitation to go to the obscure Ukrainian city of Lviv. I asked my mother if there were any documents relating to the pre-war period, and she gave me two battered old briefcases full of materials. And in those briefcases, I found surprising things. I knew my grandfather was French. I also knew that he had an Austrian origin, but didn't know very much about it. But I discovered in those papers a Polish passport, issued in 1923, and two Nazi passports issued in 1938 with a swastika on the front describing my grandfather as staatenlos, stateless. That caused me really to think, not only am I British, not only am I French, but I also seem to be Austrian and Polish, and perhaps also even German. Who am I? East-West Street was published in May 2016, a year ago, and a month later, of course, Brexit happened, which raised further questions about each of our identities, each of our relations to our local communities, to the nation of the United Kingdom in which we happen to live, whether it's one of the four, to the United Kingdom as a whole, and of course to the European Union. So the question of citizenship, who do I belong to, is one that touches each and every person in this room. Some of you will remember that at the Conservative Party conference last year, the Prime Minister, Theresa May, made a statement, and I quote. She said, "If you believe you are a citizen of the world, you are a citizen of nowhere." I thought that was troubling, and I thought it was trite, because I've always sort of felt myself to be, in my work as an international lawyer, as a citizen of the world. You'll remember that that statement, that speech, which got a huge round of applause at the conference, was accompanied by a dismal proposal that British companies, including perhaps my own university, University College London, would henceforth be required to list foreign employees on some register somewhere. And that caused us, the law faculty, to ask the question, where many people come from different parts of the world in terms of the passports they hold, are we going to be listed also? And my own grandfather's history with being listed in that sort of way, of course, resonated very powerfully. But as I read what Theresa May had said, I went back to one of the books that has guided me most as to where we are now and where we may be heading. It's a remarkable book by an author called Stefan Zweig. Some of you, many of you in this room will have read him, and I would in particular invite you to read again his extraordinary book published shortly after he committed suicide, The World of Yesterday. It's a book about who we are and what we have lost. And at a late part of that book, he writes, and I quote, "For almost half a century, I trained my heart to beat as the heart of a citizen of the world. On the day I lost my Austrian passport, I discovered that when you lose your native land, you are losing more than a patch of territory within set borders." And there was obviously here a disconnect between the world of Theresa May and the world of Stefan Zweig. And in the gap between those two worlds were a series of questions. Who am I? Am I British? Am I French? Questions that I began with. My mother, who is French and has lived here for 60 years, doesn't actually have a British passport. And I've spent now several months trying to persuade her to get one, because I am concerned that at her stage in life, she may soon in this country, shockingly and appallingly, face a situation in which if she finds herself needing to go to hospital, she may be asked to show a British passport in order to be admitted without also providing a credit card. That is the point that we seem to have reached and the place to where we are heading. This connects with my world of international law. As a matter of international law, it's for every state to determine who is entitled to nationality. And nationality, of course, determines who will get a passport. International law doesn't set conditions on who may get a passport as a matter of domestic law, but it does say you cannot be stripped of your nationality if you will be left stateless. Dual nationals can be stripped of one nationality, but they cannot be stripped of their only nationality, and that's a rule that came about after 1945. So all of this actually got me thinking about my two passports and other passports that other members of my family may have. Where does the passport come from? The passport is a reflection of citizenship. You'll find the first mention to any piece of paper looking like a modern passport in the Hebrew Bible, in the book of Nehemiah, about 450 BC. It was intended to allow safe passage as the king's officials traveled through foreign lands. The legal foundation for controlling the movement of people stems, as you will know, from the right of the sovereign, the state now, to determine who may enter and leave a territory. The earliest surviving reference in this country to a passport seems to date back to the reign of Henry V and a 1414 Act of Parliament, which provides for a single sheet of folded paper in Latin and English intended to prove one's identity whilst abroad so as to conduct trade. And back then, the king could issue a document to anyone, regardless of their origin. They didn't have to be British. There was no such thing as being British then. It was more like a form of identity than an evidence of citizenship or nationality. In 1540, the task of issuing such documents passed on to the Privy Council. And the oldest surviving passport in this country seems to have been signed by Charles I on the 18th of June, 1641. In 1794, the task passed to the office of the Secretary of State, and records remain of every British passport, every single British passport granted from this time. Passports, more generally, however, were not required for international travel, I thought this was rather amazing, until the First World War. In a sense, we are where we are, once again, because of the Treaty of Versailles, the rise of nationality and the rise of nationalism. It was different in some other countries. What happened in the mid-19th century was the rise of railways across Europe actually led to a decline in the issuing of passports. France actually abolished passports and visas in 1861, and other European countries followed suit. By 1914, passports and their similar types of documents had been practically eliminated across continental Europe. But that war changed the situation. Passports came back onto the agenda as matters of security. The capture and execution in November 1914 of Karl Hans Lodi, a German spy living in Britain using a fake US passport, was one of the main motivating factors for the 1914 Act, the British Nationality and Status of Aliens Act. Passports then were simple things. Photography was not yet widespread. Applicants had to describe their age, their profession, their height, their forehead, their eye color, their nose, their mouth, their hair, complexion, and so on and so forth. The answers given in some of these passports were not always helpful. Travelers would sometimes describe their features as intelligent, or normal, or even agreeable. By 1938, the British passport had acquired its dark blue cover, and that stayed unchanged until European Union passports were introduced. The 1914 Act had many requirements. Foreign-born residents had for the first time to carry an alien registration card. It was a response to anti-German sentiment. And because of this, British women across the entire empire who married a foreign man automatically lost British nationality. And I quote, "The wife of a British subject shall be deemed to be a British subject, and the wife of an alien shall be deemed to be an alien." It was only, remarkably, in 1948 that women in the United Kingdom were given the right to their own nationality and right to their own passport, regardless of marital status. After the First World War, everything changed. In 1920, there was a move to standardize the issue of passports. There was a League of Nations conference on passports and customs formalities, and modern mobility regimes were inspired by these competing desires. On the one hand, to increase travel and trade, countered by suspicion of foreigners, spies, and a fifth column. At that conference, a resolution was adopted, and the preamble to the resolution expressed the belief that the hindrance of international travel by passports and customs formalities affected the personal relations between the peoples of various countries, and that this was a serious obstacle to the resumption of normal intercourse and to the economic recovery of the world. So passports emerge as a tool for population control, the movement of population, and their issuance reinforces the sense of nationality, the sense of identity, and the sense of citizenship. But they are a very, very recent phenomenon, literally a century old.